Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 34th Annual Peer Mediation Conference, Ventures in Peer Mediation. The Peer Mediation Conference has been bringing together youth peer mediators for over 30 years now. This is the first year the conference has gone virtual to connect peer mediators around Hawaii and others aspiring to develop their own peer mediation programs. And thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jose Barzola from the Matsunaga Institute for Peace here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. This year's Peer Mediation Conference is brought to you as a wonderful collaborative by 22 different organizations around Hawaii that support this conference that is spread out throughout the month of April. The Peer Mediation Conference consists of an opening panel, 16 skill workshops, and a closing panel. And you can learn more about all our events at matsunagainstitute.eventbrite.com. I can put that link in the chat as well. Today's event will focus on the skills workshop on It's a Vibe, Nonverbal Communication with Noelani Anderson. So thank you so much for joining us to learn about peer mediation skills. This session is an opportunity to explore the power of nonverbal communication by sharing experiences where the vibe controlled the situation. We will use acting exercises and real life scenarios to both create and conquer the vibe of the room. You will leave this workshop with tangible tools to center your own vibe before endeavoring a task, mediation, or otherwise. Noelani Anderson is from Hamakua on the island of Hawaii and currently holds the position of Peer Mediation Coordinator at the West Hawaii Mediation Center. With a background in peace studies and theater education, Noelani enjoys finding innovative ways to approach conflict resolution, using art, culture, and the nature around us to inspire creative solutions. So to get us started, I'm going to turn it over to our good old friend, Noe. Thanks so much.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome. I just wanted to start today by saying that I'm wearing a Selena shirt. I don't know if you can see it. Selena, yeah. So I feel like, does everybody know who Selena is? Like, bitty, bitty, bum, bum. Yeah. So I don't know, of course, the J-Lo movie in the 1990s was amazing. But now there's a new series on Netflix. And at first I was a little skeptical. I was like, I don't know, how can you remake what was already a phenomenal movie? But they're doing a really good job. And the first season was amazing. The next season is coming out soon. But I've been thinking about this workshop for the last few weeks since I decided to present on this particular topic on nonverbal communication and specifically like the energy of a space. And as I was watching Selena the last few days in my like little windows, it's like, you know, like you give yourself little rewards, and that's been one of mine. And I was just thinking how I really wanted to wear this shirt today because she's an inspiration for what it means to create a vibe. And I think that if you know much about her or don't, just listen to her music and you'll already get it. But I think it's like really profound what she did, especially now if you look at the Latin English music crossover and how so many artists are collaborating, whether it's like Bad Bunny and Cardi B or, you know, all the different artists that collaborate now in Latin music. It's so much more present. And I think a lot of it had to do with her fight in like the late 80s, early 90s to bring the Latin and English music world together. And also just that she had this amazing spirit of welcoming. And I think that I wonder if history would have been different had she not been one of the artists to bring that to the forefront. And if you look at her music, if you watch any of her music videos or interviews, you just get a sense of like, welcome, we're all here. You're a part of it, whether we're, and it didn't really matter if she was speaking in English or Spanish. You just knew that like, if you were in the room, she would have been so sweet to you. And so I just wanted to start by that because I think that's why I'm wearing my Selena to inspire me for this workshop today. I even got the hoops going. So welcome to everybody. Today's gonna be a lot of interactive stuff. So I'm gonna ask everybody eventually, like if it gets to them, we're gonna pass the ball a little bit, or I have a talking piece that we're gonna pretend to pass in our virtual world. But I wanted to start today with a poem. So instead of putting this poem on, I do have a little PowerPoint to help me guide myself through this and us as a team through this workshop. But instead of putting the poem on a PowerPoint and disrupting us all being here together, I'm going to try and paste it into the chat so that if you want to follow along, you can. And this is really just a poem about the sensory experience. And we'll go more into that in just a little bit. It looks like I can't paste it into my little box, so I'm going to read it and hopefully you just absorb it. And if you want, I can send it to Jose after. Before the Ending by Anita Barros. Later, when we think back to this time, we will say that we did not look long enough at the moth-like insects swirling at noon under the branches of the redwood flaxen wings, catching the sun. We will say we did not practice one another's languages. We did not learn to listen beyond the noises we made, for the small, insistent stirrings of those who wanted us to know them. We lived arguing and imagining. We thought our lives were separable from the life of the cornstalk, the many-eyed bluebottle. How will we explain this? Who will be there to hear us? We staggered between our hunger and our confusion. We traversed the breathing grass on roads we believed in. Now and then, we were pierced by a startling immensity. Will anyone ask? Will we ask ourselves why we did not sit patiently enough, quietly speaking together or in silence, watching the shifting mosaic of leaf shadow on leaf, stroking the dog's broad silken head, gathering what abundance there is, the grass bleached in places but strewn with fallen plums, tasting the sweetness still with us to be tasted. So I just want to let that poem settle for a moment. I think that in doing this workshop, I really want to appreciate the silence that is sometimes often occurring in between the words we speak, and really learn to embrace and even use that silence and hold that silence. If anybody here is a mediator, sometimes there are some really pausing moments. And if we don't let those moments breathe and speak for themselves, often we miss something that could have been really important to hear. And especially in this space on Zoom, how we at our center have been doing mediations, the silences are like extra awkward. Who's had an awkward silence on Zoom? Who's had an awkward, like, I'm talking, you're talking, we're all, oh God, we're all talking, but no, you go moment. So it's important to acknowledge the space we're in, but also realize that there are things we can do to hold that space. So I'm also going to be talking about holding space a little bit today. So this workshop is called Nonverbal Communication. It's a Vibe. I don't know if anybody knows the 2 Chainz song. It's also explicit, so I'm not going to play it, but it's basically like, it's a vibe, yeah, to me, it's a vibe. And I was listening to that song and I was like, oh, when Jose and I were talking about nonverbal communication, I was like, that's what I'm going to call this workshop. So let's see, how do I say view, present? Can everybody see? Yeah, okay, cool. It's loading. So I work for the West Hawai'i Mediation Center as the Peer Mediation Coordinator. I also help out with our mediations in the office and my case manager. But I also teach theater on the side. But for this particular workshop, I find that it's important to mention that I'm a licensed massage therapist and a yoga instructor. And I've been doing both those things for many years. So I think that a lot of what I've learned about holding space and the nonverbal aspect of communication is especially through massage, by learning to listen to the body and trust that communication. So I love this quote. If you've been in my previous workshops, you know I love quotes. So this is a Maya Angelou quote that it tends to be something I try to remember in my everyday life. Oh, excuse me. Wait, how do I go reverse? Oh, I always click the wrong buttons, guys. Okay, so we're starting again. Rewind. Let's imagine we were in my theater class and I hit the rewind button. Rewind, everybody. Okay, there we go. So the Maya Angelou quote is, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." When we begin mediation, the first thing we have to do is make sure that it's a space people feel comfortable sharing in, whether it's online or in person. And especially I find this with kids too. You know, if you choose all a specific kind of kid, a specific kind of student in a room, whether it's all the troublemakers or all the straight A students or something, as soon as they get into that room and see who's in the room, they're already creating a judgment of what this is going to be like. So already thinking about the dynamics in your room, both of physical space and of how you are presenting and building this is super important. So just keeping that in mind, like how we make people feel from the get-go is already gonna affect how our mediation goes, and especially in a small community. So I live on the Big Island, which is small. I work in schools, I work at a restaurant, I grew up here, my parents know everybody. I really have to live by this because people might end up in a room and already know me from somewhere else and have a judgment or have had an experience that maybe was where I didn't make them feel good. And that's already gonna set me up for a failed mediation, essentially. So this is something I try to live by. I think if we are working as mediators and conflict resolvers, it's not a day job, it's not 9 to 5, it's not a, oh, I go do the mediation and I'm done. It's gotta be a lifestyle. So we're going to talk a little bit about physical space, but then also just about the energetic state. So before going into that, I wanted to talk about our sensory experience. So a lot of what we do is communicative through words, but there's so many other senses. So we have our smell, our touch, our taste, among others. So what I wanted to start with was we're going to go around in our little bubble, and the way our little Zoom. So we're going to do this is I will start, and then I'll, this is my talking piece through my hair. So it's a whale tail stick. It's cool. My dad's a woodworker. So this is really important to me. It holds a lot of power. It holds a lot of meaning. And plus whale season always means surf season here. So that's also important to me. So I'm going to pass this to somebody I see on the screen, and then they're going to go ahead and share. So it's basically a one word. This question is just to share your name with the group and then share a specific sensory experience that's not verbal that makes you feel open or relaxed or just like present. Calm is another word for that. So my name is Noe, and the smell of incense, specifically Nag Champa incense, when I inhale that smell, I immediately feel like a calmness and a presence. Everybody for sharing. I know it's kind of a hard thing sometimes. We're in a space that's visually interesting being on the Zoom platform, but also just with spaces we're maybe not familiar with it or know. Even that is an exercise, asking a sort of personal, vulnerable question. You know, it's personal. It's like, what makes you feel calm? That can be a deep question. So even that, just having that share right there is an exercise in holding space. I love all the scents. So something to remember as we go into mediations is, what does your space physically feel like? So scents are something sometimes that can really be relaxing. Sometimes they can trigger people. So finding that neutral scent that's going to be, you know, sometimes we work in offices or we're holding a mediation in an office that maybe smells like tape or something. Not, you know, being really aware of, if you cover it with like a car smell, but one of those like car smeller things or something, just being aware of those little subtle things is actually really important. And then I just was hoping that for a moment, everybody could take a second, if your camera's on, to show in your camera something in your physical space right now that relaxes the space. Just like we talked about a sensory experience that makes the space feel more open. For me, I have next to me a vase full of lavender that I picked yesterday. So we don't have to go one at a time. Just if there's anything around you, even if it's like a bracelet that's on your person that makes you feel kind of more relaxed, just showing that, and that, yes, like, oh my God, I love this. The pillows though, I'm dying, Cody. Oh, the picture of the waterfall. Oh, I see a Starbucks cup. Yep, that's almost like another taste sensory thing, right? Some coffee, a squishy ball. So I want to recognize all of those things, but especially the beverages. Like when we are in a physical space, it's important to have at least water available to people. It really does provide, even if they have their own water bottle, it's like, we care about your well-being. It's one of those little things. So setting ourselves up for success in that prep when we're doing mediations. Thank you for sharing, everybody. Those pillows though, I want one. Okay. So next slide. So I also work as a waitress on the weekends and a bartender as well. Hawai'i, we have to have multiple jobs. So the other day I had a couple in, this was like maybe a month ago, and they were celebrating their 50th anniversary. They told me their story about how then they first met. He was in a skiing accident and she was the nurse, and they just had this energy of full joy and happiness and love for each other. Not like, oh, we're married 50 years if we had to be, but a full commitment to each other and this loving look in one another's eyes. I started crying because I'm like sensitive. I went into the kitchen and I was like crying. I was like held it back at the table, but I went to the back and I'm like starting to bawl. And I work with like all these local guys, you know, everything. They're like, oh yeah. I was like, what's up? Are you okay? Like, yeah, we gotta go put somebody out or something. You know, they're all like getting nuts. I was like, no, I'm just like so emotional about this couple. And they were so beautiful. And I asked them, I said, so what's the secret? You know, because we always kind of want to know when you meet somebody who's been together that long. And the lady, she said to me, it's not what you say that matters, it's what you don't say that does. So I thought about that, and it occurred to me to bring that into our space here and think about how much what we don't say can have an effect on things. And in the mediation process, that can often be really triggering, you know, when there's something left unsaid that's not being shared and the other party may know about it. So that's when we would go into our, if you've been in the mediation format for facilitative mediation, where we can go into our separate spaces and talk individually with people. So I wanted to add this just as a piece, because if you're in a mediation or even teaching mediation, having the nuance and ability to recognize that something is not being said and offer the opportunity to take a private session with one of the participants is really, really important. And that's something that we learn over time, but we can practice in our daily life with all of our interactions. And then that goes into how to ask an open-ended question that's gonna offer what's not being said to be revealed or give space for that. And I think that's another workshop with the Kailua High School students, I believe next week. So I'm gonna attend that workshop. Asking open-ended questions can be really hard, but the first step to asking an open-ended question is recognizing that something's not being said. And often that can be what matters most. And that's a nonverbal cue, right? That's not like, oh, I want to say this, that's something that's not happening. So to recognize that is a really important skill. Oh, I think, you know what? Go back. Oh, I skipped one of our things. So I wanted to do, there's another thing that I wanted to talk about here. Presenting. Okay, so in this breakout room, so we're gonna go into a breakout room for the next, I wanna say 5 minutes, and Jose's gonna set that up. I didn't complete my last slide, or this slide. So what I want to do here is think about an experience for you where something was left unsaid and it caused a conflict down the line. It might not be easy to think of this, but we're gonna go into breakout rooms and just share with each other for the next 5 minutes. So it might not have been something that you personally were involved in, but something you maybe observed. We've all observed these kind of things, I think, at one point or another. So we're gonna go ahead and do that now, and this will be your prompt to share something, or the exercise in the breakout room, to share a situation where this occurred, where something was left unsaid and it caused a conflict. So welcome back, everybody. I know that was a quick breakout session. I'm sorry about that. I hope everybody had a chance to share something. In my group, we had a conversation about how you could look at it the opposite way too. Sometimes too much is shared and we don't know when to hold back from saying things. And as somebody who's sharing, it's really interesting to look at faces and recognize those nonverbal cues of like, okay, too much is going on right now. Like it's your turn to stop. So it's really just a very thought-provoking quote, and something that I encourage you all to think about in your spaces, because there are two sides of that for sure. And how do we recognize both and make space? So I'm gonna continue to share my screen here. These are all all these pieces I'm giving you. This is a 45-minute workshop. I was telling Jose before we started that I feel like this could be a whole weekend where we could dive into these things. But since we just have this 45 minutes, I'm just planting these seeds, and hopefully you guys can use them in your respective circumstances. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was how often the context of a situation is what allows us to learn or have an experience. So there can be two very different contexts with the same thing happening, and one can be negative, one can be positive, or vice versa. So when we talk about mediation specifically, we have to set ourselves up in a way that we're opening the space to a creative solution. If anybody has read Liz Gilbert's Big Magic, she talks about ideas as being alive. And in the same way, I think of solutions in a conflict resolution situation as being alive and needing to be nurtured. But if we don't know they're there and they're alive, they're already not going to come to life. So I'm going to give an example. I used to teach surfing to women in Central America, and a lot of the women would come to the program, and we would be surfing for a week, and they'd be getting up, they'd be standing, they'd be surfing on green waves. And a lot of them would share that, their boyfriend surfed, or their brother, their dad, or something, but they could never learn because they spoke to them a certain way, or they didn't have they brought them to like crazy waves, or all sorts of circumstances that set them up to not learn. But I don't want to say failure, but set them up to not have a successful situation. And the space we created was an all women space. So already we had this like camaraderie, and we had this great surf house that was all painted and had surf pictures everywhere. And I would always I'd get a playlist from the group at the beginning of the week. I'd see what everybody's favorite songs are. So as we're going surfing, we're listening to everybody's like theme songs, we're already amped, and all those little things that we put together, from what we ate for breakfast, how we woke up, the vibe in the room when we woke up, would set them up in a situation where by the time they got to the surf and we got to the beach and we're ready to get in the water, they were already in a state of like, I'm going to do this. We got this. And I don't think that mediation or really anything is all that different. We have to set ourselves up beforehand for a space that's going to create success. So I don't think we're going to have enough time for this writing prompt, but I'd love you guys to write it down, this question, and then after this, if you have some time, maybe take 5 to 10 minutes. I also have a writing group with a group of friends, and a friend of mine, one of my friends in the group this morning, she texted me and she said, I have to read the text because we have this little group. And I said, I love our writing group. And she said, I love hearing everybody's voices and styles. It's so fun. And she said, I haven't written anything in years, so it was daunting, but having a safe space with loving friends is huge. That she hadn't written in years and she was scared of writing, but having a safe space was huge. So I think remembering that as we go into our mediations, having a safe space is huge. It's a lot bigger, and it owes more credit than we give it. And it's very much a nonverbal thing. You know, when we think of nonverbal, a lot of times in mediation, we talk about like, oh, how your face looks and how you react and all these things. I'm an acting teacher, so that stuff kind of drives me nuts because it's all indicators. Like if I'm like, oh, I'm going to be sad now, I never teach my kids to play that. I teach them about the motivation behind it, the action behind it, so that it's authentic. Because if our reactions are like our head bobbing or whatever, or nodding to make sure that, yeah, we're listening, if it's not authentic, people know. They know energetically. And not to say that we shouldn't like nod our heads yes and all those things. If that's authentic for you, then by all means, that's a great nonverbal cue. But I don't like to in mediation teach that we should have these like specific physical actions, and more so that we create an environment and an energy of being authentic. And really that goes back to presence. And at the beginning of our group, we were also present, listening to each other share. Things like that are a really good practice, especially if you have students, or like Emma, if you're in your class, holding that space is already really good practice for being a skilled mediator. So for this writing prompt after our workshop is done, if you could write about an experience where you learned something you would not have if the context and circumstance had been different. Like I use that story of the surfers, the women surfers who couldn't learn in one context, but were very able to in another. So just reflecting on any personal experience for you, whether it be, you know, learning a language or learning how to cook something or whatever it may be. And you could use that prompt if you have students as well. I'll give everybody a moment to write that down. Oh my God, we have 1 minute. Okay. So my final slide, I'm going to bring it home to this idea of everybody's heard this quote. We cannot direct the wind, but we can adjust our sails. So like I mentioned, it's our task as mediators to hold space to support an environment where creative solutions can come to life. That's a big task. And that it's on so many layers, it's energetic. And so that comes back to, I'm gonna wait till this motorcycle passes my house. That looks really fun. It's like 2 people, no helmets, free life, highway riding. I live on like Old Mama the Whole Highway, if anybody knows that. So holding space comes back to how we show up. And I don't mean to bring this back to like self-care and how are we, but it really does matter. And how you show up to mediation depends largely, if you're gonna hold space for something like that to be successful, we have to be good in ourselves. You have to show up ready, knowing that this is coming, that this is an honor and a responsibility, and it's like a big kuleana, right? So how do you show up? So I don't think we have time for this group share, unless maybe we can, if anybody needs to leave, you can go ahead and leave. But I just wanted to do one last group share an activity or a morning ritual that helps you set yourself up energetically for the day. because like this quote, we don't know how people are going to show up to the mediation. Likely they're not going to show up all happy and centered and good. It's going to be a little rough. So we have to adjust to that. And in order to do that, we got to have that strong keel. We got to have strong sails. We got to know where we're going. We got to be able to navigate. So I just wanted to I loved the first shares. It was so fun to hear everybody's, I'm like smelling as I talk about it, the sense and the sensory experiences. If you need to leave, thank you so much. But if you'd like to stay, I'll go ahead and do this. So I would say my morning ritual that grounds me. I mean, I'd love to say my yoga and all that stuff, but it's really making my coffee. I have like an Italian percolator espresso, so it's not like a button on. I gotta grind the coffee. I gotta put it in. I gotta fill the water. It's a little bit of a meticulous. It's a rhythm. So, and doing that really does center me. Thank you guys all for sharing, and just remembering, like, as we go into conflict resolution as a lifestyle, to set ourselves up for success in terms of making sure that you're in a good space to hold space is really, really, really important. And I know this is kind of a different nonverbal workshop, but hopefully there were a couple of snippets that you can take with you, and really just the exercise of holding this space together in the room and sharing in itself is a reflection of how nonverbal communication can be really, really powerful. So thank you so much. And I know that we have another session coming on soon, so I don't want to hold up the Matsunaga Institute's account. Mahalo, everybody from near and far. Have a beautiful day. Go listen to some Selena.
Yes. Thank you so much, Noelani, for providing us amazing skill workshop and for reminding us about Selena. It's a great way to get us into the vibe of today's event. Appreciate your insights into peer mediation as approach as a peace builder, conflict resolver, most of all your passion and kindness in all that you do. Thank you everybody for joining us today's webinar. Truly appreciate your interest and support and joining us to learn about peer mediation programs throughout Hawaii at the 34th Annual Peer Mediation Conference, Adventures in Peer Mediation. And only a few more events left, but I'm really looking forward to keep seeing you all. Thank you again, everybody.